Question is that the motion be agreed to. I give the call to member for Macnamara.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I would first of all start my remarks by acknowledging the member for North Sydney for moving this motion, and all of the speakers before on this debate and all of the speakers who will come after me. It takes courage to put your name to a motion such as this, and I acknowledge the member for North Sydney for doing so. As this motion states, the 9th of December is the United Nations International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the victims of the crime of genocide and the prevention of this crime. It's been 73 years since the 1948 Convention where the punishment of the crime of genocide was ratified. The Holocaust only ended 3 years earlier. The darkest hour of mankind, where over 6 million Jews, Gypsies, political prisoners, other enemies of the state were murdered at the hands of the Nazis. My grandmother was born in Germany and fled in 1938 in October, only 1 week before the Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. Many of her family were not lucky. They were unable to escape, and they stayed on in Germany, and in 1941 were some of the very first people that were sent to Auschwitz, and they obviously never survived. The term genocide was coined by Raphael Lemkin, the Polish Jewish lawyer. But he did not just coin the term genocide in 1944, looking at the Holocaust. He also referenced the genocide committed against the Armenians, the Assyrians, the Greeks and other minorities between 1915 and 1923 at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. To this day, this genocide has not yet been recognised by the Australian government. 33 other countries have already, including Germany, France, Italy, Canada, and most recently the United States. President Biden made that historic declaration this year on Armenian Remembrance Day, and he was the very first US president to acknowledge and recognise the Armenian genocide. But I also want to take this moment that prior to the US president making that recognition, the House of Congress, both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, both chambers in which the Australian parliaments drew inspiration and carried the names of our houses of parliament, following the US example, our House of Representatives and our Senate, in their honour and in their example, should follow suit. Because when houses of parliament seek to make recognitions such as this, we don't do it lightly, but we do it in a way that is intent on truth and intent on recognising history as it was. And it was significant that the US parliaments and the US Houses of Congress did recognise the Armenian genocide, and I thank the member from North Sydney for taking the steps in today in replicating and taking steps so that Australian Houses of Parliament do the same, and hopefully one day the Prime Minister of Australia follows suit in the same way that the US President did. And I think it is worth mentioning in this debate the differences between Australia and America. Obviously, Australia does have an important relationship with Turkey. Each and every year, Australians go and commemorate in Turkey on the beaches of Gallipoli, and the Turkish government has, for decades, collaborated with the Australian government in order to mark that difficult battle and allow Australians to go and pay our respects. That should not be put in jeopardy, and that should not be diminished in any way, shape or form. What we are doing here today is simply recognising what was, and simply recognising that in order to move on and in order to acknowledge the atrocities committed against the Armenians, the Assyrians and the Greeks, that we must be honest. And being honest with the Turkish government and with the Turkish people is the least we could do as friends of the Turkish government and as friends of the Turkish people and as friends of Turkish Australians who are proudly part of our wonderful country. But this motion and this reform and this recognition is what must happen. It happens slowly, but it happens purposefully. And I'm pleased to add my name as the descendant of someone who, and the descendant of family who understands acutely what genocide is, and we recognise that what happened to the Armenians was a genocide. We stand with them, we acknowledge the truth that happened, and we hope for better days in the future.